show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, off the cuff. One episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. I'm a retired 27-year veteran of the NYPD, retired as a sergeant out of Manhattan North Homicide Squad. With me today, my co-host, retired detective, NYPD detective, and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
I'm good, Billy, and excited to discuss the autopsy results of Gabby Petito.
Absolutely. And today, because of this, a very scientific finding, the autopsy results in the way of not the manner of death, but a cause of death. And we'll get into the manner of death later. I have retired NYPD, a detective sergeant, John Palucci, who was a crime scene extraordinaire. In fact, he goes all over the country investigating some of the hardest crime scenes. And he's a wealth of information. John, welcome so much to the show today. I'm glad you take out of your busy schedule. I know the money machine needs to be oiled every week because all the money you're making doing that stuff.
It's the academic machine these days. I'm actually pursuing a master's degree now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I just want to show a little bit of the press conference that was held today by the Moab, the Wyoming coroner, and hang on, let me just get this plugged up, and then we'll share it on the screen, and we'll give comments on it a little bit.
Is not released by state statute, and I'll be glad to entertain some questions at this time.
Hi, Brian. This is Alex with the News and Guide. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm curious whether you're able to pinpoint a date of death and when, and if you know whether.
Let me just go back because we missed him saying what the actual cause of death
released.
Okay. Yeah, good idea.
Autopsy findings and photographs and that sort of material is not released by state statute, and I'll be glad to entertain some questions at this time.
Okay, let me
From
just
the
speed up
time that the body was found, that is actually determined by law enforcement first, than than our office. What's the question? I didn't hear a question.
I apologize. This was the
Discovery ID. Dr. Blue, thank you for your time. Okay, it's John Walsh from In Pursuit with John Walsh on Discovery ID. Dr. Blue, thank you for your time. I think everybody in the world believes that Brian Laundrie killed Gabby. With your extensive work on the body, are you sure that it's Brian Laundrie? And will the FBI issue a nationwide homicide warrant now that they know the cause of death?
We are only tasked with the determination of cause and manner of death. Who committed the homicide is up to law enforcement, and I cannot answer the question about the FBI. You would have to contact them.
Jeremy Kopis, you are now allowed to ask your question.
Yes, hello, doctor. If you could please, can you comment on any other bruising, maybe on the body that possibly was healing, possibly older bruises or cuts that might have been healing over the last couple of weeks before her passing?
By Wyoming state statute, no other information about the autopsy is released, just the cause of death.
You know, it's a little bit brutal to watch this guy. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, he determined that the cause of death was due to strangulation. The manner of death was, of course, homicide, which was ruled numerous weeks ago. Some of the stupid questions that the press, I was baffled by the question that John Walsh asked. I mean, just out and out ridiculous. The guy said ahead of time, I'm not going to answer any other questions than what the cause of death was. Any other questions about? So he asked, "Who do you think he did it?" Now I mean, come on. He just told you he's not going to answer that. But,
Billy, there's several people in the chat already saying that John Walsh should know better. They recognize that, and I don't know what his thinking was when he actually asked two kind of stupid questions. Same thing, really. Whether or not the coroner believed that Brian was responsible for the murder, completely out of the realm of the coroner's purview regarding an autopsy. You know, I mean, unless he found a film in her pocket of the murder, you know, how could he know something like that?
Yeah, ridiculous. John Palucci, Detective Sergeant John Palucci, NYPD Crime Scene Unit, probably the best crime scene unit in the nation by far. And I don't say that loosely because, first of all, you guys go to more crime scenes than probably any other crime scene unit on this earth. So when they talk about other crime scene units as the best, I believe you guys are the best. So having said that, let's baffle our audience with your knowledge. And I want to ask now, what are some of the things they're going to be looking for in a cause of death of strangulation? Tell us what they're going to be looking for.
Well, see, here's where we run into problems. You know, this isn't a stranger incident, right? So strangulation is helpful because if it was blunt force, look at it this way: that last question that was asked, is there any other bruising on the body or anything like that, right? Think about being out in the wilderness and wearing shorts and hiking and climbing up rocks and going through brush and all that stuff. What was related to the homicide and what was related to just the kind of stuff you're going to encounter while you're out there in the wilderness? You know, I think obviously if something shows signs of healing, then they can sort of say it's not contemporaneous to the incident of death. You know, but there's going to be stuff that's going to be on the body that is a part of hiking or can be explained as being a part of hiking. As you guys know, what's exciting about this feels like being back at work. You know, it's like, so the homicide squad's calling forensics and saying, we just got some new information. Let's revisit our analysis strategy, right? And as you guys know so well, when you have a familiarity case like this, familial or boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever, it's so hard to prove anything. I mean, go back and look at the Preppy murder case, right? Where it's, you know, strangulation was part of a ritual for them. There's all this autoerotic asphyxiation.
John, just let our audience is from all over the world. They don't know the Preppy murder case. The Preppy murder case was a famous case in, I believe it was the late 80s, where a preppy kid from the Upper East Side murdered a girl named Jennifer Levin. Right. And his defense was she died during rough sex. So that, I just want our audience to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so essentially like autoerotic asphyxiation, right? Could it actually be an accident? You know, things like that. If that's a regular practice of theirs, if they've gone through the house where the two of them lived, they might find ligatures that, you know, like, because people don't want to walk around with marks around their neck, right? So they get like the fur-lined ligatures or whatever they do. So if you find other evidence of this in the house, that could kind of corroborate this guy making a claim that this was an accident.
Well, John, they were traveling the country in a van.
Yeah, so
something could be in the van, but let's talk about asphyxia from a pathological, but what the pathologist may find. Could he still, even though the body was potentially out there for 23 to 24 days, could he have still found bruising around the neck? Could he have found the hyoid bone broken, which is a, you know, asphyxiation 101 sign of strangulation of the broken hyoid bone. So could he have still found those things after this amount of time?
I would, the whole thing is, it's very hard for me to answer that. We're talking about a totally different climate setup than what we had in New York, how a body is in a much hotter, drier climate than versus New York. So I'm not really the person who can answer that. I don't really have that in there. The broken hyoid bone, that is not always, lack of a broken hyoid bone is not always an indicator that this wasn't a strangulation, wasn't a homicide by strangulation, right? It doesn't always fracture in those types of incidents. Of course, you might have petechial hemorrhaging at some of the mucous membranes in the eyes and the lips and stuff like that. It depends on how, does that environment actually preserve this evidence, or does it cause it to more rapidly degrade? So now a body, because when you put the body in a cool environment, it's going to retard the post-mortem artifacts and the rate of decomposition. So now if it's in a hotter environment, is it going to accelerate it to the point where now we're going to have decomposition to the point where it's very hard to tell these things? I believe that they would still have enough evidence. If he's making this call, he's basing it on something. I'm sure it's much more than maybe a fractured hyoid bone or something like that. Also, you have to consider what is there out there as far as animal scatter. Are there other, some sort of animals that get involved and do some damage to the body as well, stuff like that. So it's out in the wilderness. Anything can happen out there. We don't know. Was it in the shade? Was it in wooded area? I'm going to confess to not knowing much about the case. I haven't been following it.
Well, we brought you on for your crime scene knowledge, but let me just toss this to Phil Grimaldi for a second. Phil, earlier on in the weeks before this, we had predicted that the cause of death was going to be strangulation. And one of the reasons that I believe you and I both thought that this was going to come back as the cause of death was because of Brian's personality. He doesn't come across as a tough guy. She's small and slight. To me, it just made sense that if he, in fact, was the killer, that was going to be the cause of death, the method that he used to kill her. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right on point there, Bill, because obviously it sounds like a crime of passion. They were involved in that dispute on the 12th of August that the police they had an interdiction with the police there in Moab, Utah. And basically what we know from that incident was there was some slapping back and forth, and he doesn't look like a big bruising type guy. There may have been a struggle if he actually did strangle her. So I would be looking for, if I was, working with the coroner on that, to look under the fingernails. Obviously, it's done pretty routinely with homicides of this nature. But the reason I'd really be concentrating on that is that those areas might be protected from the elements. Now, John brought up the weather. The weather there at that time of the year, it could be pretty warm in the day and it gets really cool at night. So that accelerating of the body by the heat of the decomposition of the body by the heat happens in the day, and then it cools down at night, which would slow it down. So there may be a good chance that there might be some DNA under the fingernails that might come back to Brian or whoever it was that strangled her. We're all focusing in on Brian. Obviously, it seems obvious that he would be the first suspect. And maybe there's marks on the neck. There might be defensive wounds on the hand. Now, John brought up a really good point about what they've been doing for the last almost 2 months before the murder occurred. There might be scratches and bruises from going on the rocks and going into the water and you scratch your knee or whatever. But I think that specifically on the hands of Gabby Petito is going to be very important because there could be defensive wounds. I mean, if someone strangles you, it's just it's reaction. You're going to fight back, especially when you feel that you can't breathe. That could cause you to go into a panic.
Phil, let me just stop you for 1 second.
Sure.
One of the things that's common with a strangulation, especially if someone puts their hands around your neck, the victim will put fingernail marks on her own neck, trying to pry the hands off her neck of the assailant. So that is another sign. Also, the thumb, if it's a manual strangulation by the hands, usually leaves a big bruise mark on the neck. So these are all indicators, but all of this can be exacerbated by the fact that the body was out in the elements from anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I think the scene would possibly provide some good information too. You know, was this a campsite where they were at?
You know, John, that's why I brought you on the show. I want you to talk about the crime scene. We brought a crime scene expert on the show for this.
Yes.
Let me give John a little backup, because I did see on Dr. Phil's show, the stepfather described the scene, and they took a camera and they went to the actual scene. He actually erected a small monument near where her body was found, actually in the exact spot that it was found. And he described the scene, and with the camera, you could see there was the area from where the van was parked to where the body was found was about 250 yards. He said it was a 5 to 10 minute walk. And he actually, with the camera, they showed the path that would be taken. They had to go over some, like a stream, and there was some logs so you could get over it without getting your feet wet and stuff. So the exact location, real quick, I'll just give it to you. He described it as he believed there might have been a tent there at one time. There was scorched earth at the feet where her body was placed. He asked the FBI investigators where her torso was, where her head was, and where her head was, he placed a flower on this makeshift memorial where the cross is at the top of the cross, where, let's say, the head would be of the cross. So that gives you an idea, John. I guess you could take it from there as regarding the area. It was kind of secreted. It wasn't out in the open. And he stressed the fact that he thought it was not a well-traveled area. However, he could see placing a tent there, having a campfire. It would be a perfect site because there was a ridge of the mountains in the foreground. And so that'll give you a better idea of what we're talking about, John.
Okay. So when you said with the burnt ground, is that indication that they had like a campfire there?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's the romantic setting where you engage in the autoerotic asphyxiation type of sexual activities, right? That gives us more problems as far as them being a couple, right? So like you mentioned, Phil, the DNA under the fingernails, right, might be well preserved, but then again, it's also easily explained. Everything is easily explained. Her blood in that camper is easily explained. Her blood that she lived there. They were, like there's so many things that could have happened. So this guy's got a lot of loopholes that he can jump through. I think one of the things we might want to look at are the garments, right? Were the garments torn in a manner that indicates a struggle or something like that? Something more than to make it harder and harder for this guy to keep explaining. After a while, there's so many, you're just going to run out of excuses.
Billy brought up a good point, though, how when a victim is being strangled, they try to release whatever it is that's around their neck. So you might have a combination of his DNA and her DNA. I think we're getting like into the prosecution part of it. You have to explain that. But if there's, I don't know how you could explain his DNA being on her fingernails, unless you say the fight from the 12th, maybe there was then that would say that she didn't wash or clean her fingernails for that whole period of time. But I mean, it leaves a little bit of area of doubt, I guess. But if you have both of those combination of DNA, as hers as well as his, I mean, and then you have defensive marks on the hands, I'm sure a strong examination of her hands was done, as well as her whole body. I mean, they listed a whole body CT scan, forensic pathologist exam, and anthropologist exam, forensic anthropologist exam, as well as toxicology. They said she wasn't pregnant. They're probably, Billy and I both discussed a rape kit, just, to put that out there to see if there was any foreign DNA from someone else, let's say. So all of those things were done, and they held the body specifically. I believe the body's being released today. So the medical examiner, Brent Blue, said that the body was being sent to the local mortuary for the family to recover the remains. So they kept the body an exorbitant amount of time, and I'm sure that they did extensive examination of her remains.
Yeah, one thing that you guys were great for, and And I don't believe that this happened in this case. Was there's another body involved, right? What about him? What about injuries to him? Is there anything on him that would indicate that he was in a struggle like that, like a violent struggle?
Well, John, the problem was he drove home from Wyoming in her van. We believe he may have left on the 27th or the 28th of August. And he immediately got home and lawyered right up. And so no one has been able to interview him, speak to him. The families invoked counsel. So that has exacerbated the case for law enforcement. And then he disappeared. Right. So that's what it has made this case very, very difficult. I'm just going to play a short video from Barbara Butcher, who is the retired chief of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, the Chief of Staff. I want to just show what she had to say about a week ago on Duty Ron's show. And this is going to be Barbara Butcher.
No facilities. It's not a place where you just pitch a tent and get water, showers, or electricity. This is very, very remote area, very wild area. Now, after 21 days, we all understand the nature of decomposition. And in addition, being a wild area, there are bobcats, cougars, all kinds of vermin. And, you have to be realistic about what kind of remains you'll be looking for. And the big challenge is to not just find those remains, but to find all the remains. You mentioned that the medical examiner's office had gone back a second time to the site, and that's most likely because they may have found that they were missing a bone or some such, and went back to see if they could find everything. That's just the realistic likely scenario here. I don't know exactly what her remains look like, but after 21 days in the wilderness.
Yeah. It's a lot of people were talking about it in chat rooms that I was monitoring and things that I was seeing. We spoke about how the lead FBI, the lead agent in charge, before the body was removed and brought to the coroner, he gave his condolences to the Petito family, to the Schmidt family. I was a little taken back by that, but once I thought about it for a few moments, I said, there could be many variables that came into play there. Have you ever seen that go on in your time where condolences are given to a family? And if so, what are some of the identifying marks that could be on a human body, such as a 22-year-old girl who has been out there in the elements for a good 20, 25 days? What could they have seen to give them that positive idea?
You're right, Ron. It's not really correct to give condolences to a family until a positive, and I mean positive, identification is made. And a positive identification is not just viewing the body, because people can make mistakes, but DNA, fingerprints, or forensic odontology, where they compare dental records to the teeth that remain. That's a really good way to identify people because it's so unique what work you may have had done. But of course, you have to know who you're looking at in order to get their dental records.
I just wanted to go. That's Barbara Butcher, the former chief of staff of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. I think one of the foremost experts on death investigation probably in the country. And she was on Duty Ron's show a couple of days, about a week ago, and a brilliant. When it comes out of her mouth, I take it as gospel. But so, John, you could see the crime scene, what it looked like.
Yeah.
Could they have been camping down by the crime scene, and this occurred, and the murder and the campsite were analogous to each other? But the van that they were driving in was about 250 yards from the crime scene. So a lot of these questions we won't know the answer till in fact there is a trial or someone's arrested and this case goes to trial, and then we'll know the intimate findings of the investigation.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, Barbara and Ed Wallace, just top dogs in this field, really fantastic. You can't beat them, So now Phil, you said forensic anthropologist was brought in. Is that right? So
yes,
that seems to corroborate what Barbara was saying, what I mentioned earlier about animal scatter and stuff
sure.
like that. If you look, I was out at the Body Farm and took a course out there. Some bones look like pebbles, especially, like some of the metacarpal bones and a forensic anthropologist, or it could be other animals and stuff like that. So forensic anthropologist might be an indicator that we do have some sort of animal scatter going on, because
sure.
Animals will take pieces of the body and run off into the woods and eat the meat off of it. And then there's bones out there. Bones. So I don't know if they did any nighttime searches. We always want to do a daytime search. Some case like that, you might want to do a nighttime search. There's a alternate light source in the ultraviolet frequencies causes bone to fluoresce. So if you have a bone mixed in with a bunch of twigs and pebbles and stuff like that, the bone's going to fluoresce. So it might give you a better, it's a better way to narrow down when you have this much evidence to get it down.
Hope the FBI is listening to that one.
Yeah, that's another story, right? So,
well, how come they always sense the love from the NYPD towards the FBI? There's so
I didn't
much
mean
love.
anything bad by that. I hope they're listening and did exactly what he just said. I mean, come on, that makes a lot of sense. You'd easily pass over something like a piece of bone, like he said. It could be a size of a pebble during the day. So you go in there at night with a fluorescent light, and it might, brighten up and it might pop, and you'll recover it. Now, chances are they did that. I was just throwing that out there. I hope that they were listening to that.
Yeah,
100%. John, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that with the autopsy and now the cause of death, they still have to marry the crime scene with the cause of death and see if there's any commonalities in there that can explain, for example, were there drag marks? Was the body dragged to the location? Was there, you guys talk about depressed footprints, the bottom of someone's shoe. Were there shoe prints? And we talk about individual characteristics and class characteristics. Class, of course, I'll explain it simple. The bottom of an Adidas sneaker is a certain pattern from the manufacturer. But the way John Palucci wears his sneakers, he wears them off to the left. So that's an individual characteristic. Did those things exist at the crime scene? You want to speak upon that?
Yeah, that's a really great point, right? But once again, we're going to come back to he has legitimate access to everything, right? So if we can say we got his sneakers and we find his footprints there, then it's like, so what? Say the class characteristics, it's Adidas size pattern, and now we have the guy must have stepped on some glass because there's a big ridge cut through the middle of the tread pattern, and we found that sneaker that matches that footprint in his closet. Then his defense is going to say, so what? Yeah, he was there. This is why what I loved about working with you guys was the chance to knock theories around, because that's how we would gain a lot of ground. We start working off the more.
John, could I just stop you for 1 second?
Yeah,
that was a brilliant point that you made. And usually we would basically impeach the person's claim of that by doing an interview. But in this case, there's not going to be an interview because he lawyered up. For example, one of the things we would say, have you ever been to this area over here in your entire life? Have you ever been there? And you show him pictures, you maybe take him there. No, I've never been here before. Okay, thank you. And that you got his footprints there of his sneakers that you vouched. But there's not going to be an interview in this case because he invoked counsel. So we cannot.
Yeah, but how they would get it in at a trial, the defense attorney could bring it up in his open or his summation. But the real way to get it in would be to put the defendant on the stand, and then he could be cross-examined. Now, that's a very risky thing and a tricky thing, but I think with enough circumstantial evidence, like I think this is where Billy was going, with enough circumstantial evidence, like, yeah, his story is going to be, his lawyer might throw it out there, or he may testify and say, well, I was there, but I left her and this must have happened after I left. That's why my footprint was there. That's why my DNA was there, this and that. Okay. But at the end of the day, with all the other circumstantial evidence, you have to get a jury to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think that that's key, beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you have enough of these little pieces of circumstantial evidence, and then you could have real evidence, the stuff under the fingernails we talked about. And then going back to one last thing, we talked about marks on him. He's not around for an interview or an examination. 100% correct, Billy. But he was along his trip. When he left that area, he stopped at gas stations. I think he may have stopped at a Chick-fil-A when he used her credit card or whatever. There may be video that might be worth looking at to see if he had a scratch on his face or a mark on his neck. And then those things might not, depending, if someone's strangling you and you scratch their face in a defensive way, if he's captured soon, there may still be marks that, aren't 100% healed. And sometimes a deep scratch in your face may leave a scar. And if, an examination is done and they can say, well, this scratch or scar happened, what we believe, in the last couple of weeks, that also is another piece of circumstantial evidence that might convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
John, one of the things that you said when you brought up the Preppy murder trial, which I tried to tell everyone here what it was about. And back in 1980, when the attorney for Robert Chambers brought up that defense, that rough sex defense, everyone was like, you got to be kidding me. That's a joke, blah, 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 blah. Then it was, the danger was that there was going to be a hung jury. So both sides got together.
Right?
The defense thought they were getting convicted, and the prosecution thought there was going to be an acquittal. So they all met at the 1 minute left in the fourth quarter, and he agreed to take a plea to manslaughter first degree. So in essence, he was sentenced to 5 to 15 years, and he did the full 15 years because he was a dirtbag in prison. He turned out to be a dirtbag even after he got out of prison.
Yeah,
I think he's doing life right now for A1 drug sales.
Right.
But that defense, when you brought up that defense in this case, I wanted to strangle you. But the point is that he can use any defense he wants because no one from law enforcement has had a chance to interview this guy.
Well, here's one thing that could lay him out, right? What if this was a ligature strangulation and they find a ligature there? So, think about camping, right? You got ligatures all over the place. You're using ropes and all kinds of things, hiking, climbing, and all that stuff. So ligatures are available, right? So say he used one and ditched it there. That could be something else that could be a nail in his coffin. Let's throw out a theory about a third person, right? Like nobody seems to be thinking about that, right?
Well, no, we've had Joe Murray on the show. He's raised every possible defense there is.
There you go, yeah.
Mickey Mantle from England, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Someone else had a super chat and had a question. Olivia Barry, thank you for the $5 super chat. Your question is, could they not tell by the surveillance in the M Piglet what Gabby was wearing on the 27th to what clothes she died in? Just to rule that out that day. Yes, they could. And I'm sure that they did use the video surveillance, if in fact they had it at that restaurant where they had the dispute on the same day that we believe she potentially was murdered, which was August 27th.
They also noted that there was a specific sweatshirt, I believe it was, that was found on the body. This is what led them to go quickly with the press conference and say that they believed it was Gabby Petito. There was I think it was a local monogram or whatever it was on the sweatshirt that led them to believe that it was her. She owned that particular sweatshirt, and I guess all the physical characteristics fit on the remains that were found. So that's what led them to believe that. And the third party, I'm okay with saying, entertaining that there could be a third party involved, whether, he left, came back, she was with another guy, whatever. That's all quite possible. But he's making himself look so guilty by not coming forward and say, hey, wait a second, I was out of the picture. It's somebody else. He's on the run, and his family's invoked counsel and all the other things that they did. You know, they went and bought this camper when he got back to Florida. I mean, they ignored, and I've stressed this in numerous other podcasts that we did. They ignored telephone calls, text messages. They tried to reach that family, Gabby's family, on numerous occasions. They called everyone they knew, and they were met with no response. And that's just, you know, that's screaming we've got something to hide. It's screaming that, you know.
100%. You know, Maribel Lopez, a great question. Why would the parents prevent him from speaking and a lawyer hired as soon as the police came?
Exactly.
He had to tell them as he was driving home in her van with her cards. The parents know everything. Maribel, we 100% agree with you.
Great instinct, Maribel.
We have Joe Murray, who's a defense attorney, whose job and life is to create doubt. We have John Palucci here, who's been to so many trials that he tries to anticipate what a defense attorney is going to do. So he tries to collect the evidence to thwart that doubt that a defense attorney is going to try to create down the road. Thoughts on that, John?
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing. So the third guy theory is pretty much worthless if there's no corroborating physical evidence, right? So somebody else there is going to, you know, Locart's exchange principle. Every contact leaves a trace, right? So when I leave this room, I'm taking some of this room with me, and some of me is staying behind in this room, you know, especially now that the hair's not sticking on my head that I get used to, you know. So, so the third guy, what if there is evidence of a third guy, right? Then he could still have the, you know, listen, I was embarrassed. You know how some of these guys that roam around in the woods, like, hey, you stand there and watch me do this to her and all that stuff. You know, listen, I was embarrassed. And so the third guy, you brought up something really good, Phil, sweatshirt, right? So now we talk about the environmental conditions out there. Hot as blazes during the day and cold at night. So the sweatshirt gives us maybe a little bit more look into the time of death, right? Was this at night when she passed away, because she's wearing a sweatshirt, which she wouldn't be wearing during the day, right? So you got the
good point,
right? Sweatshirt, the campfire, you know, those types of things.
Sure.
You know, one of the things that the coroner said also, and I think that there was probably a power struggle between the coroner and the FBI. Clearly, I don't think the FBI wanted the cause of death released ever until an arrest is made, or perhaps until they make an arrest and take it to trial. However, I think maybe the coroner overruled the FBI and he got the cause of death released. He also mentioned in his brief words that, why did it take so long? One of the reporters asked, why did it take 4 to 5 weeks to come back with the cause of death? And the answer is it didn't. But I believe there was some headbutting between the coroner and the FBI. And he mentioned that they wanted to have all the experts come in on an autopsy. I don't know any autopsy anywhere in any major city where they bring experts in. I think the coroners or the pathologists in that city do the complete workup. The other thing, waiting for the toxicology come back, it's not necessary to wait for the toxicology to come back with a cause of death, especially that it was strangulation.
Yeah, good point. You know, how many times have we had these jurisdictional headbutting kind of deals? You know, but whose is it really, right? So as far as we know, we have a crime of murder, right? And that crime of murder was committed in that county where that coroner is the boss of that county, right? Once he starts fleeing to other states, then we have the FBI involved. But is there like a crime spree along the way? I guess he commits a crime in another state when he used a credit card. I'm not really sure.
Well, yes, he had used an access device on his route driving the van home from Wyoming. But the other thing is that the FBI could have grabbed the jurisdiction also because Wyoming, the Teton National Park,
federal property,
is a federal property.
I got you.
So, I mean, usually, we're a large, NYPD is a large police department. We don't think of the FBI as investigating homicides. That's usually not what they do. So we would, if this occurred in New York City, I think the FBI would bow out rather quickly. but maybe in a small jurisdiction like Wyoming, where they don't get that many murders, the FBI stuck with it and grabbed jurisdictional, especially in regards to that access device and potentially a fleeing felon interstate. That screams of a federal charge.
Yeah, I mean, the FBI is like a great partner to have on these investigations. I worked on a case in 2004. We were looking for remains of John Gotti's victims. Right, there was a body found in 1986 or 88 where, and you remember how many homicides there were back then, right? It was like over 2,000 homicides. So crime scene would be able to fit more than one on a roll of film. You just had one job after the other, so this was just a recovered body in, I didn't mean to say it about crime scene fit more than one on a roll of film, but a case like this is a recovered body, clandestine grave, boom, you got a body, and that's it. So apparently there was an informant that came back years later and said, like, underneath that body, there were two more bodies. And one of them was his neighbor that disappeared. Right. So we were out there, crime scene was out there working with the FBI. We were working jointly with the FBI, with their evidence response team. So they have a lot of, especially it depends. I'm not sure how well equipped the laboratories are in Wyoming. There's certain analyses that do get and probably should get farmed out to the FBI. They have a lot of good equipment to do things. So working in conjunction with them is a good thing. But sometimes you do get into these territorial disputes, and it gets to be problematic. Like New York City, we could handle our own, and we always did. So I know there's been instances where we've remember there was a Times Square, we had the Times Square bomber, and then we also had the police station. I think it wasn't at Times Square. There was a device that was detonated outside the Times Square police station. So those were some other joint operations.
That was the guy on the bike, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the bike was dumped down in a dumpster someplace further south, I guess.
Yeah.
And because I was managing all the DNA evidence back then, and we wanted it. It was our case, and so we wanted to do the analysis, but the FBI also wanted to do the analysis, and so there were fights going on way above my head when it came to that case. But these things can get a little contentious sometimes.
The FBI is got, I've always said they've got deep pockets. When you do any kind of telephone work and stuff like that, they can get it expedited. A lot of times the budgets with the police department and the DA's office, they didn't want to spend money on telephone dumps and cell phone tower dumps and things like that. FBI right away, they boom, boom, boom. The U.S. attorney writes it up quick and they get it for you. So there's definitely a need to have them involved in certain investigations. And I'm sure that in this investigation, the cell phone activity is going to be very important, because he cannot say I wasn't in that area if his cell phone is pinging. We're going to have a general. She was last seen alive on the 27th in the evening at that Piglet restaurant when they had the argument and they were asked to leave the restaurant. And then he's back in Florida on the 1st. So there's a time frame there. And, we have the van being the other people, the Bethunes that videotaped the van. So we have a pretty good idea of when the murder actually took place, probably 27th into the 28th is my estimation. So if his cell phone was pinging in and around that location, it'd be very difficult to say he wasn't there. Now, again, like you said, there's going to be a defense attorney that might say, well, of course he was there, but it all happened after he left, because they're not going to be able to say it happened at 11:23 p.m. They're going to say an approximate. They said 3 to 4 weeks was the time of death. So we know she was alive up until the 27th. That was the last time she was seen or heard from. And then it would have to be after that would be the time frame that we believe the homicide took place.
There's John. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask real quick. What do we have that tells us that the van was parked in a certain location? Was there tire tracks or something like that, or?
No, Bill, you want to, the Bethunes, there was a family that did, they did like a travel podcast where they would go on this journeys.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually came home from their trip, and they saw on social media that there was like, check your video if you were in this area around this time, all regards to Gabby Petito. She went through the video with her husband, and then they found the white van. And the reason they knew it was the exact van, because they had the video from the 12th when they had the police interaction on the dispute, the day of the dispute, August the 12th. And in the front dashboard of the van was a hat, and it had Florida plates, and that's how they knew that it was van. Then from their uncovering of that video, that put the searchers into that area, and the body was found, I believe, within a day and a half of them coming forward with the video.
Yeah.
I just wanted, a lot of people want to talk about the, and I think it's an important component of this, and there'll have to be a lot more investigation in regards to of the domestic violence component of this case. And the more we learn about it, the more we realize there was a great deal of domestic violence. So I'm going to put on the video of them getting pulled over by the Moab police, which sort of screams out to us now that we know what occurred. And I'm going to put it up on the screen. And I just screwed this up. Sorry, guys.
Hello.
Let me take that off the screen for a second.
Yeah. While you're doing that, I just want to, really, let the audience know that, forensics is amazing. It's powerful. It does so many cool things and all that, right? But as we're seeing now in this investigation, without you guys in the squad, you could end up with nothing. You could have some of the greatest, very, good DNA profiles, good fingerprints. You could have all kinds of stuff, but without you guys locking in a story, right? Without you guys running the history on this whole thing, without all the stuff that you guys do, is that's what makes the case, and this is the forensics part is a tool. It's a tool that assists you guys. But
John, so much of an investigation is done through interview and interrogation.
Yeah.
And that part of this case has been thwarted by them invoking counsel very, very early on. I'm going to put this up on the screen right now. We'll take a quick look at this.
You want to place your vehicle into park and go ahead and turn it off for me? Yeah. No, park? Oh, it isn't parked yet. Okay, turn off your engine. Go ahead and set your keys on the dash for me, all right? What's your guys' names?
Gabby.
I'm Brian. Gabby, Brian, okay. What's going on? How come you're crying?
I'm just sorry. We've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day. We were camping yesterday, and camping got stuff, supplies and stuff. I'm sorry I hit the bump there.
I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry.
Can I get you to step out of the vehicle for me, man?
Yeah.
Just hang tight right there. Do you mind if I take your keys and just put them on your hood?
You got it, buddy. I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you. Oh, no, you're fine.
I wouldn't have done that.
I'm going to go ahead and close your door, okay? Why don't you come over here? SO2T9. I have the female that was on the passenger seat separated from the male. Keys are on the hood. You want to tell me what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up back the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him. I guess my vibe is like I am like in a bad mood. And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I hate to work at an organic juice bar, but I just quit my job.
Okay.
I was a nutritionist. That was my job.
Cool.
And I just quit my job to travel across the country. And I'm trying to start a blog. I have a blog and stuff. So I've been building my website. So I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it. So that's kind of been like I don't know. He's like, down there. I don't know. We've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because
told
of
me
your OCD?
told me I needed to calm down. Yeah, but I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time, and he really stresses me out. And this is a rough morning.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't I sit you down in the back seat of my car? You're not in any trouble, okay? I'm not going to be putting handcuffs on you. You obviously don't have any weapons. I'm going to get you into the air conditioning, let you take a breath, relax a little bit, and then I'll come back and talk to you in a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
All righty. Like I said, you're not in any trouble. So just go ahead and take a seat. Like to be. What's that? Yeah, I just spoke to her. So, you want to do me a favor? Let's go ahead and get you to step out of the vehicle, alrighty? Come on over here. You're not in any trouble right now. So, tell me what's going on.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her. So, like, I locked the car and I walked away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything. So I give her time. I mean, we really had a nice morning, if anything, but she just worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going because we want to go like arches before the stuff like that.
Okay. You want to tell me about those scratches on your face?
She had a cell phone in her hand. That's why I was pushing her away, because she wanted me. I locked the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute because she was getting a little worked up. And then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys to her. So I got in the way. I was just trying to. I know I was going to push, but I was just trying to push her away to go. Let's just take a minute, step back, and breathe. And we see she got me with her phone.
Can I see your hand? Oh, you got a mark right here.
Oh, that's from a wire.
That's from a wire?
Yeah.
You want to tell me about hitting that curb?
Hitting the curb was her grabbing the wheel.
She grabbed the wheel?
Yeah. She said, I can't believe we're getting pulled over.
Now, obviously, now it's easy for everyone to look at this and say, oh, this is clearly a domestic violence incident. And we've analyzed this tape. We've spoke about the conduct of the Moab police on whether what they did was correct or incorrect. Many people have weighed in all over the internet. And I definitely feel that there is a domestic violence component to this. And unfortunately, it appears that it ended in a murder of a young lady.
Yeah, I think that the background we're getting from her friends was that he was very possessive, controlling, that he took her IDs when she was going to go out with her friends to a bar, so she couldn't get in the bar. So there's obviously some type of domestic violence component in this. Some people in the chat between last night's show and today's show that they talked about whether or not she was emotionally disturbed. I mean, when you see her right at the beginning of that, she's obviously upset. I don't think there was any indication that she needed a psych evaluation at that point. I just wanted to make that clear. I mean, when you look at it, she was excited, she was crying, she was upset, but she wasn't looking to hurt herself. She didn't indicate anything like that. She wasn't talking about suicidal tendencies, homicidal tendencies, anything like that. So I think that there was no need for that at that point. Again, in hindsight, 2020, would arresting both of them had prevented this? We really don't know. That's probably the only other thing that could be done. And then Gisela Kirsten, we had on last night, she brought up a great point that if they had checked on them the next day, because they were eventually separated. He went to a hotel, she stayed in a van, and I thought that was a great point. That she brought up two great points actually. One was about checking on them the next day, and she said that when she was in her own, I guess it was a domestic violence situation. She said that if someone had said to her, she was actually walking by a police officer when someone was going to eventually assault her, had the police officer said, "Are you okay? Do you feel safe?" I think that was a great point that she brought up, that, you know, the officers, if they had said to her, do you feel safe, Gabby? Are you in fear? Is anything being with Brian? Are you worried about your safety? If she would said yes, then it would have changed everything, you know. The question, I mean, I don't know if it was asked, but it doesn't appear that way. So that was two great things that she brought up.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you know what I noticed? All right, so she's talking about doing a blog and all this stuff, right? So now there's gonna, and he mentioned something about that too. So this is where the digital multimedia evidence, the electronic evidence is going to come in. Is this going to corroborate this story, or is this just a story that they made up? I noticed she's not really dressed for camping, and I mean she's got a lot of jewelry on. She's got 2 necklaces. She's got multiple rings on, bracelet. You know, not the kind of stuff you want to be out there climbing on rocks with. Some that's, you have the potential to lose those things out there, right? So my question is, how did the police end up actually come in contact with them? Was that?
Yeah, they got a call from a 911 caller, and we weren't aware of this at first, that they saw him smack her. So they were actually responding to a potential assault or a domestic violence incident. So initially,
they were actually pulled over down the road, like 3 miles back from where they had come from when they were pulled over. And there was it was actually 2 911 callers, I believe. We only heard from one, but there was actually 2. Yeah, they saw that there was some type of dispute in the street. She was trying to get back in the van. She was actually trying to climb through the driver's side of the van, and I guess that's when he was allegedly smacking her. So that's what initiated the 911 call, and that's how the police got involved in the interaction that day on the 12th, August the 12th.
That's interesting. Him locking her out of the van, and then him staying in the hotel and her staying in the van, right? So you see like a little pattern of, you know.
Well, the van was registered to her, and I think the police came up with the idea. They actually called ahead to a hotel. They suggested it, I would imagine. They called ahead to a hotel. They got him checked into the hotel. She stood with the van, and they must have hooked up, obviously, the next day. And Gisela, I always mention her name the wrong way. I don't pronounce it right. Gisela had said the one thing she came up with, and I thought it was a pretty good idea. Maybe the police should have did a welfare check the next day. That might have, put in a seed in the back of his head. Oh, you know, not only did they interact with me yesterday, now they're checking on me. You know, who knows if maybe she would have reached out to her family by that point, or they might have headed home. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what could have possibly prevented this, but just thinking about it for the future, if there's other interactions by police officers anywhere in the country or in the world for that matter, to go that extra step. It looks like these officers, we stressed it, Bill and I, in the past, they really went above and beyond. In New York City, they would have gotten probably 10 minutes of the officers' time because there's just so many calls going on. But it looks like they did, you know, what they did, due diligence, as they say.
Yeah.
Amber Marie, she has a question. Would this strangulation be enough for circumstantial evidence, and would they be able to issue an arrest warrant with that? I believe that the police now have enough to issue an arrest warrant based on circumstantial evidence that Brian Laundrie is a suspect. What you need, of course, for an arrest warrant is something called probable cause. Yes. So I believe, based on circumstantial evidence, yes, I believe they do have it. Folks, if you're not subscribed to Police Off the Cuff, please go to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up. We're building our channel, and we appreciate all you guys that subscribe. I call you guys our fans. Other people don't like that. They want to be called a subscriber. You're still our fans. Anyway, so yeah, there's some very good questions in this. Was this a domestic violence incident? You know, I believe 100% it is now. And when we look at the case, of course, through 2020 hindsight, everyone believes that there should have been an arrest at that scene on August 12th. My question is, an arrest of who? And the way I would have, if I was called to that scene, knowing what I know now and being a sergeant, I would have arrested both of them. But would that arrest have prevented the murder down the road? We don't know that. No.
Yeah.
It was the police that put him in a hotel?
Yes.
Yeah, they actually drove him over to a local hotel. They called ahead first. They must have suggested it he agreed, she agreed that they were going to separate. So they really I mean, that's police science 101, to separate the two combatants. And they actually separated them for the night. They put him in the hotel. They must have had her go to a location and stay in the van overnight. That must have been what they decided to do. But yeah, there's further video of that body cam video of them driving Brian to the hotel. They introduce him to the hotel clerk that they spoke with over the phone. They asked for the guy. Are you so-and-so? Yeah, this is Brian Laundrie. He's going to check in, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they actually did that. And again, the one more little extra thing they might have been able to do that might have, I don't know if it would have helped but in a future case, a welfare check the next day. Let's see, maybe they didn't get back together. Maybe they're still here. Just check on them and see where their heads are at, going 24 hours later or the next day,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Phil, you want to give this a read?
Sure. Joe Murray, a good friend of Police Off the Cuff, a frequent flyer, as they say. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York City area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He knows both sides of defense. His website is jmurray-law.com. That's jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702. That's 646-838-1702. Or you could email Joe at joe@jmurray-law.com, joe@jmurray-law.com.
A lot of folks in the chat are asking, why isn't there an arrest warrant now for murder?
There's no need at this point.
They don't need it because they have an arrest warrant for unauthorized use of an access device. So if and when they do find him, they can lock him up for that, put him on ice for a while, and then build the homicide case, build the murder case. And then if in fact they have probable cause, which I feel they do right now, arrest him for the murder and proceed. Then they're in no hurry to drop that arrest warrant because certain legal things in the mechanism start rolling once you make the arrest for the murder, speedy trial, all of that type of stuff. John, comments?
Yeah, no, as far, I just want to say Joe Murray is a dynamite guy. You want to talk about a fighter,
Good people, Joe.
If you're in trouble,
you gotta love him.
That guy's gonna fight for you. I mean, forget it. He's a fighter, literally a fighter too. He's a boxer, So
yes,
nobody's gonna, he's gonna get his story out there, get your story out there. Yeah, great guy. So as far as the legalese goes, I'm not really a guy for that.
When Joe comes on our show, he challenges a lot of our theories, and I happen to love it because it keeps us on our toes, so to speak, And last night when I looked at the comments, there was a comment from a retired sergeant that I worked with in Brooklyn South, Frank Whalen, who was a homicide. So he was a detective. He was a sergeant. He worked in the squad, and he eventually was in a homicide squad. And he pointed something out, and I think, John, you touched on it earlier. He said, you guys are doing a great job. You're naturals. He commented me and Bill Cannon, and I really took it from someone as a great compliment, coming from his stature as a homicide sergeant in Brooklyn South, handled hundreds of cases or worked on hundreds of cases. But he pointed something out, and I think that this is really key to everything that we're talking about. Being in the squad, he goes, it's just like we're in the squad room, spitballing the case. And that's really what we do as detectives. We look at interviews, we talk to people. Then when we get back to the office, we put our heads together and we throw out different theories and ideas. And the reason we think this happened, or reason we think that didn't happen, or just a lot of different things. And a lot of times that's what's key to solving a murder investigation or any case. Perhaps, it doesn't have to be a murder, but when you spitball with other detectives, you throw out scenarios, you're tapping into your experience. And then a guy like you, John, from Crime Scene. Now, I noticed when you looked at that interview, you immediately noticed, this is key to crime scene investigators. You said, well, she's got jewelry on, she has this. You right away, you assessed what you were looking at on her, just as if you were standing over a body. You would do the same thing, because I know I worked with crime scene hundreds of times, and when we would get there, we would try to explain to them what we got, what we found, what we'd be looking for, and then they would offer, again, spitballing, so to speak. They'd say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I want to do this, and we would offer suggestions, maybe take pictures of that and different things. And I think that that's what your expertise, as well as our expertise, it comes together and it helps us to investigate and come to a successful conclusion on any case.
I think a good question is, where is that stuff now? Where's that jewelry now? Too, right? Was that
That's an interesting factor. Yeah.
Right. Just that pawning stuff on the way back to, or whatever. Was it with the body? Was it recovered?
That other point you brought up about she was dressed like going to the beach almost in the daytime in that August 12th video. And we're talking about possibly a sweatshirt that was local to her surroundings that they believe she owned. So that sweatshirt being on was able to identify her. That may also help decomposition from occurring too as well. Am I correct in that, John?
Well, it might accelerate it during the day,
Right. True. That's a good point.
Yeah. So,
Brittany Yard, I just want to close the door on this. And a lot of folks in the chat have asked this. I think they haven't upgraded it to murder in hopes that he may talk. He cannot talk. He invoked counsel. He can never be interviewed. I've said this ad nauseum all over the time. The only way he can ever talk now is if attorney and prosecution agrees to do something called the proffer.
Right.
And that's the only way he could talk. Other than that, he is not allowed to be interviewed by law enforcement. He invoked counsel. And I'm sorry if I sound...
no, you're making a great point, Bill, because the only way that he could talk now is to waive his right to immunity and say, yeah, I want to plead guilty to it. I want to tell you what happened. And his lawyer's never going to let him do that, obviously. I mean, that's out of the realm. And like you said, unless maybe they could strike some kind of a deal, you're facing the death penalty or you're facing life without parole, but we'll give you a chance, plead guilty. I don't see that happening. There's probably 10 attorneys knocking on the door to handle this case in a defense mode. Just probably, I don't know if they're as good as Joe Murray, but probably on the same lines as a Joe Murray and the things that he brought up. So that's not going to happen is the point.
Kelly Delmonico, like John said, she was wearing her sweatshirt, so it was probably at night when she was killed. Then he had plenty of time to concoct a story about what happened to her before he pulled away. It's possible that Gabby's body was laying there dead when the Bethunes drove by in their white van. Like the Bethunes said, they didn't see any particular reason to stay in that area. Nothing really extraordinary to see there. Gabby and Brian probably chose that spot just to camp out for the night. That's an interesting hypothesis. We don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense.
It's a great tool. I know you guys must have done this dozens or hundreds of times, and then your viewers could do this. One really fantastic tool in murder investigation is a timeline, right? So now, and people at home could be doing this, right? Like if you get a piece of information, say there's a phone call made, with a ping and this and that, start putting these things together, right? And then look for anomalies, and that's when you guys really come in with your interviews. If he's already got a story locked in, which we don't have in this case, but once we start establishing that timeline through witness statements, through facts, through evidence, digital multimedia evidence and stuff like that, her being on the computer, we can start to look for anomalies, right? So if she wasn't on the computer all day that day, and they both said that she was on the computer, but people at home could do this. What time, give me a time. What time did these people see the van? All the stuff that happened before the murder, right? And then after the murder, and then write down the time, and then write down the source. Like, is this a witness statement? Is this a credible source? Is this something that I read in the National Enquirer? But like, where did I get this timeline from? And they can start to put it together and start doing their own investigation.
John, it's difficult where we're sitting, not being, we say this all the time, not being privy to the case folder and to the real actual timestamps, video that provides timestamps, tolls that provide timestamps, other people's video that provide timestamps, times that they were in a restaurant provides timestamps. You're right. timelines are tremendously important. But when you're doing this from where we're sitting, they're inaccurate, because there may be information out there told, and you cannot vet the information 100% because unless it's put out by the police or the FBI, or it's a video that is obvious, I cannot totally trust the information.
So I'm saying that's why you'd want to source it. Like, where did I get this timeline from? Where did I get this one particular item on my timeline? Where did I get it from? Like you do with each one of these things. So it might be interesting for people to start doing that. And this is just going to continually evolve, this case, And
100%. We're at about an hour and 10 minutes, so I'm going to give I believe our closing last remarks. Phil, I'm going to give it to you first. Any last?
Yeah, first thing and foremost, I just want to offer my condolences again to the Petito family. I can't even imagine what they're going through today. I know that on the news they said that they wouldn't be making any statements right now. I could sympathize with that. They have to, it's like ripping the skin on an open wound, and it's starting to heal. And now you're ripping it open again. My thoughts and prayers go out to that family. I think we want to keep Brian Laundrie in the media, that somebody possibly could spot him. Like I said yesterday, possibly going into a bathroom. You might cross paths with him in a 7-Eleven if he's in the country. Let's keep his face out there. Keep Gabby's spirit alive. We want justice for Gabby, and we want Brian Laundrie brought to justice. John, it was so nice to have you on today and to meet you. I obviously, I don't remember working with you, but you brought some terrific expertise and knowledge, and I think we meshed it all together from the crime to the crime scene to the autopsy. And thank you again.
John Palucci, final thoughts, and also let everyone know the name of your company.
Yeah, I'm CSI Experts Inc. And I got a website, CSIExpertsInc.com. You could go to. So yeah, I do a lot of consulting, some training. I'm going out to Chicago and give a lecture at a conference out there next week, and keep busy moving around. But I want to say it's an honor to be with you guys, and it's, to me, this is feeling like we're back in the business, because things are unfolding. Here we are talking about it. Things are unfolding. We're putting these ideas out there. Your audience is really sharp, wonderful group of people. Like you said, Phil, the Petito family, it's got to be the most unnatural thing to lose a child. They're suffering, and as are many, 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 many other families out there, and we just want to make sure we're doing our best. Everybody's doing their best to bring justice and closure to these things.
100%. I'd also like to reiterate that our shout out to the Petito family on losing their daughter is a horrendous thing. And, getting closure. I mean, they may have known about this before today. I don't know for sure, but, we try to, when we cover these cases, we try to cover them with as much respect as possible. Phil and I both have worked hundreds of homicides, and I can't tell you how many I've seen John Palucci walking out of homicide crime scenes that you wouldn't let a dog walk in. It's that nasty, 95 degrees, maggots all over the place. And that's the environment that crime scene technicians work in. I know on TV, they show you them wearing a Armani suit and coming in and out of, a crime scene. And that's not the reality of it. It's a really, really difficult job. And when I say the NYPD crime scene unit is the best in the world, I definitely mean that. And anyone that's worked with them will give them that thumbs up. And all you folks listening to us, we applaud you. Thank you so much for giving us the respect, giving us your time, giving us the shout outs, and just sitting in the audience and being part of this audience. So on behalf of Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, I'm Bill Cannon with my co-host Phil Grimaldi and today's special guest, John Palucci. Thank you guys so much and have a great day.
Thank you. Great being here.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode, just saying no.